And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12 Ounce Sports platform and networks. That includes, of course, Twitter, Facebook, our YouTube channel, Twitch, and also our website, 12ouncesportsradio.com. You can also catch us live here on Zingo TV, channel 761. Hope you all had a great football weekend. How could you not? What an absolute great weekend. Probably one of the best ones that we've seen for NFL playoffs, maybe ever. I know it's one of the best ones in my lifetime. They always say the divisional playoff round is one of the best, and it lived up to form this weekend. Almost had all four road teams win. 3 games settled by a last-second field goal, and then the fourth game in overtime. Man, that shootout between Kansas City and Buffalo, whoo, still catching our breath here on that this weekend. So it's setting up to be a pretty decent looking championship weekend, or championship Sunday rather, with the AFC game first with Kansas City hosting Cincinnati and then San Francisco hosting Los Angeles in the nightcap live from SoFi. Boy, oh boy, that is going to be one hell of a game. Hi, everybody. Captain Lou here with you tonight till 10 o'clock Eastern time on the 12 Ounce Sports Network, of course, with the Captain Lou Extravaganza on this Tuesday, January the 25th. We've got so much to talk about here tonight, and we got a great lineup of guests coming up. Really looking forward to this. We're going to talk, obviously, the NFL divisional playoffs throughout the night, off and on, but we've got some other subjects that we're going to defer to here on the program. Our guest tonight at 8:30, really excited to bring in this gentleman. First time he'll be on the show. Here local out of Lansing, Michigan. Bob Every is his name. He's a longtime boxing aficionado. He was a coach. He won the Golden Gloves back in 1966 out of Grand Rapids, the Michigan Golden Gloves Championship. He was a friend of Muhammad Ali, and I just couldn't wait to get him on. I've been, trying to find a good time to get him on, and the anniversary of Ali's birth was a week ago, and it kind of ties into an article that I wrote on the network on our webpage that you can check out on 12ouncesportsradio.com, talking about athletes in your lifetime as maybe as a youth or even now, if you're like me in my mid-50s. What did you consider, who did you consider larger than life? And I grew up, following sports, really starting to follow them in the early 70s. And I couldn't think of a more larger-than-life athlete at that time than Muhammad Ali. You had him, Al Kaline, Pete Rose. To me, it was Greg Landry with the Lions, because that was my team. And you look back on that and you think, what would it be like to see them in person? And to me, that was my definition of larger than life. And that and a personality maybe on TV. We talk about the passing of John Madden. That kind of got the ball rolling for me on that. And, John Madden it was almost like he was part of our living room every Sunday night and, doing football games, broadcasting them. And, guys like Al Kaline and Pete Rose it was almost like they were part of my family because I used to listen to their games on the radio all the time. I was a Tigers fan and a Big Red Machine fan back in the 70s. And, I was number 14 in Little League and all that. So, I patterned my game after Pete. And so guys like that, larger than life, and the responses I got on my Facebook page and on Twitter, where you can follow me at The Real Captain Lou or Facebook, Louis Gamlin, guys of all ages, everywhere from the Bart Starr to, Sonny Liston, the great baseball players, Willie Mays, Sandy Koufax, Willis Reed, and then, of course, the more current ones, LeBron James, he's larger than life. The guy is one of the best basketball players of all time. Michael Jordan was a lot of people's, a lot of the Bears from the 80s. It's such a great eclectic group of people. But I thought, I really, Muhammad Ali was one of my all-time, larger than life guys. I can remember watching him in the early 70s when I first really got into sports. It's one of those things where, my dad was such a big sports fan and my grandfather's, and I would sit and watch them get excited. And Muhammad Ali fights were one of the main attractions. And back then, and we'll talk to Bob about this, but back then, you didn't have to pay $70 to watch it. It was on free TV. Ali Frazier, the triad, or the, three of those, or the trilogy, if you will. His fight with Foreman, his fights with Ken Norton, controversial as they may be. I just can't wait to talk to Bob about that. But also just to kind of get a peek at what Ali was away from the ring in his later years. Obviously not, with his onset of Parkinson's and whatnot, obviously the shell of the person he was back then, the larger-than-life personality that he had. So can't wait to talk to Bob about that. At about 8:30 Eastern time, he's going to join the show. 9 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to talk to Dave Kurtz. He's the director of hockey operations for the ACHA. We follow that very strongly here on this show. They're less than 50 days away from their national tournament, which is coming up just outside of St. Louis, starting on March 10th. All 5 divisions right now going to be in the same location, and it's always a great time. You get 72 teams down there, 3 divisions for the men, 2 for the women, and it's always a great, great time of some awesome hockey. Dave's going to stop by. We'll get an update on that, and we'll check in with his world, and we're going to ask him, too, his larger-than-life athlete growing up, watching sports, in the 90s. So, not trying to date Dave at all, but you know what I mean? That's kind of what we're looking at. And then at the bottom of the second hour at 9:30, friend of the show is going to stop by, and he's got to be grinning from ear to ear with the San Francisco 49ers. Boz Echevarria is going to join us. He's our West Coast insider, if you will. Anything breaking out there, we'd like to talk to him, get him on the show. He's always gracious with his time. His 49ers are right there. They're one step away from going to the Super Bowl. And, wow, who would have thought that, huh? Who would have thought they would have beat Green Bay the way they did? I didn't see it. I'll be the first to admit, I was 2 for 2 on my picks this weekend. I almost forgot I did pick the Rams, and I did pick them in overtime, although it wasn't. As funny as I didn't get to watch, I watched the replay of the game because I was broadcasting a hockey game Saturday night. But I watched that game. I listened to it on the way home. And it amazed me at how pedestrian Aaron Rodgers looked in that fourth quarter and his lack of confidence in his players. You can blame special teams all you want on that. But I got to tell you, got to hand it to Kyle Shanahan. Now, you've heard me on more than one occasion bang on him. I didn't think, his record isn't the greatest. He's had 1 Super Bowl run. But I got to tell you, as I've always said here, I am, when I'm wrong, and I admit it. They've done a masterful job. And, they've won despite maybe Jimmy G not playing his best game. Yes, they took advantage of special teams. But they took advantage of their strengths too, which was Deebo Samuel. And so, Aaron Rodgers not trusting his receivers, you could see Lazard wide open in the middle. He could have ran all day. They wouldn't have been in that position. But now Green Bay's out, San Francisco's in. Congratulations to the 49ers. We'll talk to Boz Echevarria about that. And I'm also going to talk to him. He's a West Coast guy, and I know he's a big Barry Bonds fan and supporter. We'll get his thoughts on the Hall of Fame vote that came down about 6:15 this evening. One player into the Hall of Fame, David Ortiz. And, the backlash back and forth. There's the younger crowd that I think really thinks he deserves to be in, or Bonds and Clemens and Sosa. A-Rod even, and there's folks like me that think they don't. They got the vote right. In here, and I will argue with you until the cows come home. But I will respect your opinion, because most of the folks that I talk to, we bounce these back and forth. They don't call each other names. I know a couple that do, so I don't respect their opinion when they do that. But my opinion on this is, it was funny, is I was listening to the announcement from the Hall of Fame committee, And one of the criteria was in what they determined, the Baseball Writers Association, is integrity. And these players didn't have it. They knew the rules. They knew what they were up against. Bonds half-ass admitted it, taking that cream. He said he didn't know it was steroid-induced. I don't buy that. And I guess the thing that bothers me about it the most, and we'll go to break and we'll talk more about this throughout the night, is I'm sure Bob Every will have he'll have his thoughts. He's a big baseball guy as well. I know he plays a lot. He played a lot of baseball, kind of in baseball leagues here in the Lansing area. But they didn't need to do this to be Hall of Famers. It was ego, and they wanted records, and obviously they wanted to play as long as they could to make the big bucks. Well, they flaunted the rules, and it caught up to them. Sooner or later, it was going to catch up to them. And this is the price they're paying. Now, I've heard Roger Clemens say that he doesn't care. It's not going to change who he is. I know it bothers Barry Bonds. And then you hear the argument, well, he's the home run king. Clemens is the third highest strikeouts. If they didn't take this stuff, would he be the home run king or would he be the third highest strikeout pitcher in history? I doubt it. You got to remember that too. Like I said, before that, they both would have been in the Hall of Fame for sure. You look at what Barry Bonds did in Pittsburgh. 3 MVPs. He was runner-up a couple other times. Roger Clemens, 3 Cy Youngs, runner-up a couple other times. But they flaunted the rules, and they're paying for it now. They'll get in someday. The New Era Committee will probably let them in. I think they meet in December, and you got to get 12 votes to get considered or whatever. They'll get them in. Now, the Baseball Hall of Fame to me is, I could go on and on about this. I'm not a big fan of the Baseball Committee or the Hall of Fame for the writers for other reasons, but I think they got this right. So, to me, it's become the Hall of Very Good. Some of the guys they've got in there right now, I don't know. There's arguments to be made for a lot of people. And, yeah, some people call them the moral police. Well, breaking the rules is breaking the rules for the integrity of the game. It's one thing to induct someone who was convicted of cocaine like Ferguson Jenkins. He did his on the field. He deserves it. Pete Rose gambled. As much as it kills me that Pete Rose is not in, it says right there on the plaque, if you gamble, you're out. And he gambled, and he's paid the price. Do I think he should be in? Yeah, but he broke the rules, and that's a bitter pill for me to swallow, and I can't waver on that. If the steroid guys can't come in, neither is Pete Rose. That's just how I feel. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll get back into the NFL divisional playoffs. We've got a lot to talk about there. We'll go back to those 4 games this past weekend, and we'll start setting up this weekend's games, and we'll talk a lot more. Bob Every scheduled to join us in about 12 minutes. We'll take a break. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-ounce sports platform and networks and Zingo TV channel 761.
12-ounce sports has a new home for betting. BetUS.com is the official place to place your bets and support 12-ounce sports. All you have to do is go to BetUS.com and type in the promo code 120Z and you'll instantly get a deposit bonus. This is America's favorite sportsbook. And remember, always gamble responsibly.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-ounce sports platform and networks and Zingo TV, channel 761. And as stated on our opening commercial, we're sponsored by BetUS. Best way to get to that website, go to 12ouncesportsradio.com/BetUS. And it'll take you right there, and you can see all the lines, all the matchups of all the games that you can bet on, including the doubleheader on Sunday with LA and San Francisco, the nightcap, and starting off with San Francisco and, Cincinnati and Kansas City. I think Kansas City right now is a 7-point home favorite, and Los Angeles, I believe, is a 3-point favorite. So you think that you know how to bet those games? Well, make sure you stop to BetUS. And by the way, for those of you going there for the first time, you're going to make your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code. It's right there on the screen, 120Z, and you get a 125% match up to $1,000. It's that easy. You put $100 in, you're going to get another 125 to bet with. So you're going to have $225 to bet on maybe the maybe a parlay on the money line on both games. If you think Cincinnati can pull it off, and maybe San Francisco, you get a pretty good payback on that. Or if you're going to go with the, with both the favorites, I believe money line, you'll still get. I think it pays 107 was the last I checked. So kind of looked at that yesterday as I'm starting to kind of formalize a game plan of what I'm going to do. But there's all kinds of teaser bets too. That's something that I like to do. You could buy points and maybe bet a little more money, a little more confident. That's kind of what I did this weekend. And Green Bay really foiled what would have been just a tremendous weekend for me. But, that's the magic of betting on the games. But that's BetUS, 12ouncesportsradio.com/BetUS. And if you're not really ready to bet on games, but maybe you want to play some slots, some, whatever, table games, a little pie gal maybe, use them as well for that. And, of course, like I said, for those of you that are making your first deposit there, make sure that you use the promo code 120Z. It's that simple, and you get a 125% match up to $1,000. So for every 100 you put in, you get 125 more to bet with. It's that simple, and to me, that is the lock of the year, lock of the century. So there you go. So like we said, the championships Sunday is set. You've got Los Angeles hosting San Francisco at 6:35 on Fox. 3:05, it's going to be Kansas City against Cincinnati. I watched that first game, and I just look at that and I think, this is the Ryan Tannehill that we saw throughout the year, the game manager. He looked like a rookie out there. And it's funny is he's been in this situation before. The nerves really got to him. You could tell by that opening possession and some of those throws. And, what really it boiled down to, I think Tennessee got a little too cute, too. How about that last possession where they had it 3rd and 1 on, like the 37 of Cincinnati. You got 2 cracks to get a yard or less than a yard. And you've got the best back in football. He's starting to feel it. He's starting to gain momentum. And what do? You run him out of the Wildcat. Everybody in the joint knows he's going to run it right up the gut. And he gets no gain, maybe loses a half a yard. Then you try running a quarterback sneak on 4th down, and it just was an abject disaster. Tennessee deserved to lose that game. They got thoroughly outcoached. And what can you say about Joe Burrow? He's a star. Obviously he played well last year, got hurt, came back. The confidence that he's shown ever since college. It's funny. I was talking to my wife. It's one of those guys. I think that he's cocky, but he doesn't it's just a different arrogance. He's not cutting down other people. He's not rubbing it in your face. He says he's going to win, and he wins. I know he smokes the cigar after the game, blah, 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 but they won. And it's I don't see him as rubbing it into other players' faces. And I like that in a guy. I like that that confidence. It's that air about him. He knows he's good, and he just thinks he can succeed. And all the guy does is win. And he's got this Cincinnati franchise on the verge of going to the Super Bowl. Now, I know it's a Herculean task against Kansas City. But it is, it's a great story. And wouldn't it be something if Cincinnati wins and they play San Francisco again in the Super Bowl like they did in the 80s? I mean, it's funny as I was kind of a Cincinnati Bengal fan back in the 70s and early 80s, only because they had the same colors as my high school, Munising. They had the orange and black. Kenny Beyond, I was a big Red Machine fan too with the Tigers. So it was kind of correlated with Cincinnati. And, they struggled like Detroit did in the 70s, and then they got good towards the end of the decade. And then they went to the Super Bowl to play San Francisco. But wouldn't it be wild? I don't think it's going to happen. I'll give my predictions at the end of the show. But I think that, I honestly believe that it's going to be a pretty entertaining game. This is a team you wonder, I talk on the show about, taking steps on, you go to the playoffs, you lose a game, maybe win one, then you get knocked out, and they're going to the championship game. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Vegas Golden Knights on their first year. But you talk about the weapons these guys got. Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got Mixon, you got, Ozawa at tight end. You got playmakers. You got a quarterback that is just, again, exuding confidence, building it more and more each game. And even if they lose. And, it brought up a great point, too. And he's got a right here also. He could have that little chip on his shoulder that everybody likes to use, Aaron Rodgers, which I thought would use to his advantage against San Francisco. You've got, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen for Buffalo. And you hear all day, all weekend, how those two are going to duke it out for a decade. They're going to be the top. You get a guy in Cincinnati by the name of Joe Burrow who says, hold on a minute, hold my beer, if you will. I'm right there with you. Hold my cigar. I'm right there with you guys. And I think he's right. He is right there with them. I think he's got an opportunity to prove that. It'll be interesting to see if they can exploit that defense at Kansas City. Kansas City's got, you talk about playing soft. That was mind-boggling. And I'm not taking anything away from Josh Allen in Buffalo in that game Sunday night, but you wonder what Steve Spagnuolo was thinking. Was it really, I don't get it. But, that's they're going to have to do something better to do that. Well, let's get to our guest line here, the Captain Lou Extravaganza guest line. And right now I want to bring in a very special guest. Really excited to have him on. First time on the show, talking a little boxing tonight. Bob Every out of Lansing, Michigan. Bob, thanks for taking time out. I know the Spartan game isn't going the way you want it, so this will give you a break from it.
Oh, my God, I'm pulling my hair out. Jeepers, creepers, they look like they're going to get onto that single-digit mark and maybe make a run, but then they end up doing something stupid. But still a little game left, so let's see if they can pull it out.
Well, let's hope so. Bob, I really appreciate you taking time out tonight. It's a great pleasure. Well, the reason I wanted to have you on is I'm doing something with our network. I polled some people on my Facebook and my Twitter pages about athletes that were larger than life. It was brought upon when John Madden passed away, and he was a guy that I grew up watching in the early 80s, late 70s, whatever. But when I was thinking about it, when I was growing up in the early 70s, there was nobody larger than life than Muhammad Ali, and he was an icon. And I know through your posts on Facebook, you've gotten to know him over the years, and he just he stands out to me more than anybody else.
Well, I'll tell you, I met Muhammad in 1970. He was actually, as you know, he was stripped of his right to box by most of the boxing commissions across the United States for his refusal to go into the service. and he was speaking at an engagement at Michigan State at the auditorium, and I remember going out to watch him, and that's where I first met him. That's where I had an opportunity to introduce myself. We kept casually in contact with one another, for the next several years, and then we seemed to grow a little closer, and actually became friends to a point where I would go down and visit him at the farm on several occasions and helped him out with a few fundraisers that he threw on down around the Berrien Springs area. And right up until he passed away, we were pretty close.
You know, Bob, people that grow up in this era don't really I don't think they have an appreciation for just how hard it was for him to do what he did in the late 60s and early 70s by, being a conscientious objector, and, whether you agreed with him or not, what he went through, I'm sure the death threats and everything else, losing his livelihood, his passion, boxing, that had to have been just so darn difficult for him.
Well, when you take into consideration that he was out 3.5 years because of him trying to win this suit against the federal government not to go in and become a full conscientious objector with a CO status, he was robbed of a lot of opportunities to make money and to become a really wealthy man. I look back and take a look at a guy like Ted Williams, who was in the service for 4 or 5 years during the heydays of his baseball career. What could he have put on the board for numbers had he been able to do that? But Ali, without a doubt, was the most recognizable athlete, and maybe one of the people, as you said, on the face of the earth. I mean, and he was a great guy. He could have, he could have gone with his resources any place in the world to evade the draft and get away. But he chose to stay here and fight it through the court system. And thank God the Supreme Court deemed that he was, in fact, out because of his religious beliefs, and he was able to resume his career.
What was the first fight that you can remember watching him?
Oh my goodness! I mean, the first one was jeepers. I don't know. I mean, right up to the beginning. He made. I followed him in the Olympics, so
okay.
I was interested in him in the Olympics, and I even forget the guy's first name that he fought. But any fight that was on TV that I could get to, I watched, and certainly, I saw a lot of the fights. And the most vivid fight that we all remember, of course, is his matchups with Sonny Liston, and those were great fights. And a lot of people still talk about that fight where Liston was knocked out, and it looked like he took a dive and this and that. And, I don't believe people understood. I mean, Muhammad was an amazing specimen. He really was. I mean, he was 6'3", 220 pounds. And, I mean, he was a very powerful individual, and he could punch. And people, I think because of his style, his dancing, boxing style, I don't know that a lot of people realized just how powerful this man was. And he had probably one of the quickest, if not the quickest, right-hand counter punches in all of boxing. And when he caught Liston with that short chopping counter right-hand punch over the top of his lead left, I mean, he turned his jaw and bam, and Liston was out. And I was down to Berrien Springs on a number of times. That's where Muhammad lived. And we would work out at the gym, but Muhammad would go in there, and I took my college softball team down at one time, and he was showing off in front of the girls, punching the bag and stuff, and I was holding the bag for him. And this is when he had Parkinson's, and you could tell that he wasn't quite the way he was when he was in his prime, but the power. And it was about a 90 or 100-pound bag that I was holding, and the force that he hit that bag with made me realize at that point, Lewis, that, hey, this guy can punch. So, I mean, I don't know that we ever looked at Muhammad as being a devastating puncher, but I'm telling you, this man had a lot of power. When he put that 6'3", 225, 230 body into work, he got a lot of power out of those punches.
Bob, and it's funny is you look, even when he was doing the rope-a-dope, and I could not, I can't imagine him, back in the day going 15 rounds, even, those unanimous decisions, whatever kind of decision in the 70s, and his stamina for a guy that big It's just
Yeah.
you look back on it now, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I don't know, quite frankly, I don't know how hard of a trainer he was. I assumed he was a hard trainer, but I wasn't around for a lot of the training that went on, and most of the stuff that I saw in the gym was generally showpiece stuff. He was performing for people, but. He's probably like a lot of the great fighters. You get up every morning, you put your boots on, you go out and you run your 5 miles, you do this, you do that. I mean, he was very dedicated to his training. I'm sure of that, but like a lot of guys in the pro ranks, we don't live with them, so we really don't know how they live outside of our sight. But I can only assume that the amount of energy that he spent to move around for a full 15-round bout, he had to do a lot of leg work, and he must have just been in tremendous condition. He had to be.
Oh, 100%. We're joined by Bob Avery here, local boxing expert and historian, Golden Gloves champion. I saw you post that from 1966 in the state of Michigan. That's awesome.
Yeah, I won my first state. I won my first state championship in '66, and then I followed it up in. So I won one in '67, '68, '69, and then I kind of retired here.
You became a local baseball legend after that, right?
Well, I did coach City League baseball, but then I got into college softball, coaching girls college softball. Yeah. Was fortunate enough to win a National Junior College Athletic Association championship in softball at Lansing Community College. And, I'm just one of these guys that grew up at a real good time in the history of this country where sports was really important. And back when I got interested in boxing. There were 8 champions, so there wasn't all this convolution of, who's the champion and how many guys you got to watch out for. You knew that who every champion was, and again, back when Muhammad came on and brought his braggadocious style and approach to boxing. When he fought for the championship of the world, when he fought Sonny Liston, for example, that was it. That's what was going on in the world that day. The media and everything was all over that. Now there's a heavyweight championship fight of the world, and, you might notice it and you might not. But, boy, I tell you what, when he fought, everybody took notice.
Bob, it's funny you bring that up because, I was talking before you came on. I first got into it, watching it with my dad and with my grandfather. And I can remember when he fought, the second time he fought Ken Norton.
Oh, my God, yeah.
It was a Friday night. They didn't you don't see championship bouts on Friday nights anymore. And about, 2 or 3 hours before the fight, our TV went out. So here we were, our whole family was sitting around a 13-inch black and white TV watching that fight. And it was a controversial ending, it was, but it was I can remember it was one of the best fights I think I watched, and it was way back then.
And Ken Norton, what a beautiful guy. I met Ken Norton in 1967. I was a member of the Michigan AAU team. Then we were competing at the National AAU Championships at the International Arena in San Diego. And Kenny was on the Marine team at the time. And he fought his way all the way up to the national championship bout. And he fought a guy by the name of Forrest Lee Ward out of New York. And Forrest Ward was probably 187 pounds. And Norton looked just like he looked all the time, just really cut. And I'm telling you, this Forrest Ward mopped the floor up with Ken Norton. Wow. He didn't stop him, but he knocked him down 3 or 4 times in the fight and ended up winning the unanimous decision, won the national championship, went out and won the Pan Americans that year because it was 67. And he turned pro and had a little bit of success, and then bam, he fell right off the cliff. I don't even know what happened to him after that, but Ken Norton was a specimen. Boy, when he jumped in the ring, I'm thinking to myself, I'm a little small-town boy from St. John's, Michigan, just up the road from Lansing, and I haven't really been out and about yet. This is really my first year in the open division and a chance to go to a national AAU tournament. I had been to a national Golden Gloves before that in Milwaukee, but to see these guys like Kenny Norton jump in the ring, and I'm saying to myself, my goodness gracious, what a specimen. And he was built, he was kind of like Ali. They were about the same size. Kenny might have been a little bit more buff than Muhammad, but nevertheless, a very, very, very good guy. Norton was tough. He was a tough fighter. He proved it in the pro ranks, and a couple guys tore him apart. Jerry Cooney really destroyed him, and George Foreman destroyed him. But, he hung in there with a lot of guys and was very tough.
Speaking of George Foreman, we all know his success he had later on in life, but boy, you talk about a guy who could pack a punch. And, I was reading up, I've read up before. So funny, when Muhammad Ali won that fight against Foreman, he was a 4-1 underdog. And, and coming into that fight, and afterwards he said that he was so beaten up after that fight, and I think it may have been the beginning of the end for him, but it just, the icons back then, with Foreman and Frazier, those 3 fights.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so fun to look back and watch.
Yeah, Lewis, when I had Joe Sledgehammer Lipsy,
yes,
we opened up the HBO portion of the show the night that Foreman knocked out Michael Moore for the championship. I was like 6 seats away. We had won our fight. Joe had won on a knockout, but he had a cut that he had to go to the hospital and have stitched up. Mm-hmm. And I stayed at the arena waiting for him to come back. Because they took him out in an ambulance, actually, and there wasn't, not that, they just said, well, you don't need to go. I mean, but anyway, so I'm watching the fight, and Foreman, and Michael Moore and Joe Lipsy were pretty good friends. We had been actually down to the gym where Moore was working out in Vegas and worked out with him a couple of times the week leading up to the fight, and he looked pretty good, but Foreman, he just caught him with that club and just knocked him cold. I mean, and how long had it been? 10 years, 12 years?
Yeah.
That he'd been the champion since he regained it. Unbelievable. That place was, and I think it was at the Mirage, and they had a auditorium that seated 15,000. It was packed, and there wasn't hardly any place to sit, and everybody and their brother was there. And my goodness, when he knocked out Michael Moore and won the title back, it's one of the most jubilation moments I think I've ever witnessed in sports.
That's awesome. See, Bob, I can remember, when you trained and you worked with Joe back when you used to come on WKAR and talk to the boys there, giving updates on him back in the 90s.
Earl Robinson, Jimmy Adams.
I
don't know if Jim is still alive at the time or not, but certainly Earl. Earl and I were pretty friends.
Oh, Earl was a sweetheart. What a guy.
He was a great guy.
Because I moved out of the UP in '91 and moved down to this area, and I've lived down here since. I live in Grand Ledge right now, and
all right,
and that's when I started listening to them, and I followed you and Joe, and the stories that the progress of that, that was a lot of fun to keep up with that too. Yeah,
I mean, boxing really has been so big in this area, and I don't know when you moved down to Grand Ledge, but Grand Ledge, back when Lansing sponsored what was called the Lansing District Golden Gloves Tournament, Grand Ledge had a team in there, and they were always good and tough, and all these small towns had teams, and it was all predicated around getting a good-sized team and entering in the Golden Gloves, and boxing was big back then, and certainly Muhammad kind of rebirthed the whole boxing scene when he came on, and it's just not the same as it used to be, and I don't know if it'll ever come back with AMA and all this other stuff coming on, but it's still I spent a lot of I'm going to call it heydays in boxing, and I think I was there at the tail end and really was able to experience some of the great moments of boxing, and of course I like history, so I'm a little bit of a historian, and boxing is heck, back from the 1920s through the 50s, the two most popular sports in America were baseball and boxing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, and a lot of great boxers come up through the time, but certainly nobody. I mean, Muhammad Ali is to boxing what Babe Ruth was to baseball, in my opinion.
100% agree. I couldn't agree more with you, Bob. Speaking of baseball, I know you're a big baseball guy. I don't mean to change the subject on you, but it came across tonight that we only got one guy in the Hall of Fame, David Ortiz, and of course Bonds and Clemens are shut out. What's your thoughts on that? Should they have been in, or are you happy about that?
I think it's ridiculous. I think that the baseball selection committee are guys that don't do any research. They're media people. I think that the baseball committee ought to be whittled down to about 15 people, and they should be across the board with a couple of ex-baseball players, a couple of ex-baseball managers or administrators, maybe a couple of media people. I think when you start allowing 100 and some people or however many it is to vote, I don't believe that the people are doing their research. Now,
Yeah.
why would you have now, do you remember, Lewis, a few years ago, they had an induction ceremony and they didn't bring anybody in?
I remember.
And now, and then the next year, what they bring in 4 or 5 guys? Are you telling me in 1 year from the other year there was an opportunity for you to bring 5 guys that you couldn't have brought in the year before? It's a joke. I mean, they need to tear that thing up and realign it and figure it out a little bit better than it's figured out right now, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know if I guess I've got my feelings on it. I'm not sad that they didn't get in, but I agree with you. The voting is flawed. You've got guys in there, Bob, that haven't been to a ball game in 25 years. They're grandfathered in with the vote. You got
Yeah.
guys that haven't covered that are writers that don't go to the games anymore, and I
Yeah.
just I don't get that.
Well,
It's just like the
yeah.
Heisman vote.
Exactly. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not real keen on it. Any Hall of Fame that hasn't inducted Lou Whitaker yet isn't
Yeah.
going to get much sympathy from me.
Me either.
And and there's a lot of guys out there like Lou Whitaker.
If he'd have been a Yankee or a Red Sox or a Dodger, he'd have been in on probably second ballot.
Without a doubt, And then, listen, I don't care. I mean, I know, in my opinion, Pete Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame. He does. If O.J. Simpson is the NFL Hall of Fame, then
Yeah.
Pete Rose belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Shoeless Joe Jackson belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Agreed.
I mean, it's so ridiculous how people run these Hall of Fames. And, of course, I'm the executive director for the Lansing Hall of Fame. And whenever you're involved in Hall of Fame, you're always open for criticism. People should have gotten in, didn't get in, and you're absolutely right. It's a tough job, but this Baseball Hall of Fame, this National Baseball Hall of Fame, needs to be cleaned up. And, it's like, another thing that grinds me. I played in this celebrity softball game this summer, and Armando Galarraga was there. He was on our team, and he was pitching. Any baseball commissioner that doesn't have the gonads to overturn that play with undisputed evidence that the guy was out and give Galarraga that perfect game has no respect, in my opinion.
And it's heartbreaking too, Bob, because this is a game you and I grew up idolizing and playing, and you look back on it, and I know, times have changed, but my goodness, you're right. It's just it's tough. It's tough to watch.
Well, and it's and the Galarraga thing. Now people say, well, he'll be remembered more for not doing it. Well, that very well may be so, but the thing is, he should have an opportunity to say, listen, I threw a legitimate, perfect game, and I should have the opportunity to say whether I want it to stay and reinstate that or just have it stay the way that it is. It's just, there's just too many people making decisions that I don't think, number one, do enough research. I think that they're new guys that don't know much about the history, and consequently, it's there's so many guys that are the foundation of sports that are being forgotten, and Lou Whitaker certainly is one of them. This guy belongs in the Hall of Fame.
I agree, and I think it's just he wasn't a media favorite back then, and it still haunts him, and that's a shame. Bob,
Yeah.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, yeah. When you take a look at him and Trammell both,
Oh.
I mean, were there ever any disputes with management about contracts back
None.
when those two guys? All right, if anybody represented the game of baseball better than them two, I want to know who it is.
And name me a Red Sox or a Yankee or a Dodger double play combination, Bob, that lasted 20 years.
None.
That's
None. It's amazing.
100% agree. Hey,
It's amazing.
I really appreciate you taking time out tonight, Bob. Getting you out of the basketball game. I want you to get back to it. It's only a 5-point deficit with 4 to go. Hey, but before I let you go, I want to say, great job on that Hall of Fame, by the way. All the hard work you put into it. I follow it, not really from afar, but every year I see all the hard work you put into it, and all the deserving people, and you deserve the accolades. And I really appreciate all the hard work you do.
I appreciate that, Lewis. Anytime you want to be our guest for one of our presentations, give me a call. We'll work that out. And if I can ever help you out again, don't hesitate to give me a call.
All right. Thanks, Bob. I'll take you up on that. Have a great
All
night.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Thank you.
Bet. Bye-bye. Bob Every joining us here, the Lansing director of the Lansing Sports Hall of Fame, and again, a boxing historian. Great stories on Muhammad Ali. And he got to know him real well down in Berrien Springs. He got to help him out, like he said. And I didn't realize he followed his whole career right from the Olympics right through. And great, great stories. And, again, something with what I think people fail to realize, the younger crowd, and even I forget, when I started watching, Muhammad Ali was, probably 72, 73. I really don't remember the hardship and the struggles that he went through, being a conscientious objector to the war, the Vietnam War, and also to, the threats and everything he went through. And, again, like Bob mentioned, all the money that he gave up, losing his professional license for 3 years and this and that. But I'll tell you what, there was, like he said, there was definitely not a bigger puncher, not a harder puncher. And, George Foreman's right up there. I get it. But back in the day, oh my God, and that rope-a-dope, it's like I said, can you imagine, going 15 rounds? They go 12 now. Keep that in mind. Back then it used to be 15 rounds. And those big guys, oh my God. I was going to tell him, I tried boxing one time with my brother, and I couldn't go more than 2 minutes with the gloves up, the smaller gloves. And I was dog tired. I just couldn't imagine it. But thanks to Bob Every for coming on, sharing his views on that, and also the Baseball Hall of Fame. He wants him in. I don't know. I guess I just don't agree. But that's what we're all here for. But I do agree with him. That committee is the Baseball Writers Association is a lot like the Heisman voters. And he's 100% right. They don't do their research. They don't go to the games. I've seen who's on that committee. There's guys on there that have been on there for over 30 years that don't go to the games anymore. Or if they don't watch other teams. It is so biased. And I don't, they've got to change it. I agree. But it's just amazing. But, again, I still am, I still don't think that Clemens and Bond should be in. And it's the integrity part of it. And it's like, I'm with Bob. If they're not going to let Pete Rose in, then these guys shouldn't be in. If these guys get in, Pete Rose should be in. And, I'm agree with him too. Shoeless Joe should be in. But, rules are rules. And with Pete Rose gambling, it's right there. And, I know that they've got all his records in there, the baseballs, the bats that they use and all that. But, it's, my dad, it's funny. It's great to hear all these different opinions on this. And that's kind of what makes sports talk great, is everybody's got a different opinion and nobody's 100% right. It's like my dad said, isn't that baseball property? The bat and the baseballs and the gloves? He's got a point there. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got a lot left to talk about. Dave Kurtz is going to join us at the top of the hour. We're going to switch over, talk some ACHA hockey with him. And we'll also get his larger-than-life athlete that he followed growing up. And we'll talk, see what's going on as they get ready for the national tournament. It's less than 2 months away. Can't wait for it to get here. That is the ACHA National Tournament down in St. Louis, Mo, starting on March 10th. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV, Channel 761. We'll be right back.
Twelve-Ounce Sports has a new home for betting. BetUS.com is the official place to place your bets and support 12-Ounce Sports. All you have to do is go to BetUS.com and type in the promo code 120Z and you'll instantly get a deposit bonus. This is America's favorite sportsbook. And remember, always gamble responsibly.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. You can catch us on Twitch. You can catch us on our YouTube channel. And, of course, you can catch us live on Zingo TV, channel 761. Let's get back to our guest line, the Captain Lou Extravaganza guest line, and let's bring in a old friend of the show, one of my compadres when it comes to national tournament time with the ACHA, and that's the Director of Hockey Operations for the ACHA, Dave Kurtz. Dave, thanks for taking time out. How are you?
I'm good, Lou. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, 50 days to St. Louis. How's everything going on the march to the national championships?
Well, it seems like a far away, and it seems like it's going to be here in no time flat. So lots of irons in the fire, trying to get everything ready.
Yeah, it's go time pretty much. When do you give us kind of a timetable, if you will? When do you go there and really start to get things in motion for the national tournament?
Well, I mean, we're probably from about 6 weeks after the last tournament. We'll start really turning our attention to the one coming up with things. But I would say it really starts cooking. And I went about October. I did a site visit along with the executive director and the president in November, and we had a meeting with a lot of the people. And then we're basically having weekly meetings with the St. Louis Sports Commission and the Blues and the rink and stuff like that, working out about stuff. So yeah, I mean it's always there. You're always doing something from pretty much after the previous one ends, but then it really starts picking up in about October, November.
And so now here we are. The first of the year has passed, and Dave, do you get, with your busy schedule, do you get a chance to get out and see some of the games all throughout the year?
Yeah, I try to. Being here in Maryland, there are several ACHA teams that are come through here and play around here. I mean, obviously, I'm only about a half an hour away from Navy, the Naval Academy, so they have teams there that I can go see at M1 and M3, and then I can go up at University of Maryland as M2. Loyola, Maryland is W2. So I can get out to a couple games, not as much as I would like to. Certainly not as many as I got to see when I was regional coordinator and then a commissioner. So
now, go ahead.
No. I was just saying, I do miss seeing games as much as I used to, but I'm looking forward to getting to see going out to the regionals next month.
No, I was just going to bring that up. It's a good segue. This year, the only division that's doing the regionals is going to be D2, and I know they're doing the 4 sites like they normally do. Is that what was the thinking? D3, is it just more of a financial thing? More kind of, I don't know. Is it just making it a little more practical for the teams this year to do that?
Well, I think that you had, it's a little bit of those both. Plus, I mean, the division's smaller than it has been in past years. And so, and if you were to look at the geographic footprint of M3 now, it's not really, unless you were to redraw the lines,
Okay.
again, you don't have four real divisions.
Okay.
I mean, or regions, as we would have said in previous years. So the really what was decided upon, and right now it's kind of in what I would almost call a COVID year decision type thing, is that, you know, to go with this top 16 national ranking, which is fine, but then of course it's something that if it was to stay, would have to be voted upon and ratified at our national meeting in Naples in April, because we haven't had one of those in now 2 years, you know, because of COVID and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where I don't know what next year will probably be the same, because anything that could potentially change, we would probably we would ask them to put like a year cap, because we're already thinking about next year. So you don't want to make a hard left turn on something, but we'll see. I mean, you know, it is cheaper, obviously, for the teams, because we're not having to do a regional. It's cheaper for the teams traveling that potentially go. I mean, make no bones about it. It does save teams money, and you know, and last year's 16 teams were good, and those weren't even necessarily the best 16 teams in the nation, because of COVID shutting so many programs down. You know, but it was still a really good tournament. And so there is now, obviously, with the size of M2, I would say that the only justifiable way to really provide a good postseason for them is the regional format, just because you have 180 teams. I mean, you know, to say we would only take the top four from each region, you know, or even a 16, or even a national 16, that's rough. I mean, you know, but this way, especially with the expansion, which everyone kind of has forgotten about, because we expanded the regionals at the 1920 annual meeting to take effect in 2021, so last year. But of course, we didn't have regionals because of COVID. And so this is the first year that the regionals will even be larger than they were previous to the last time that they were competed at. So there'll be two more teams added to the regional format. So now it used to be, it was 2 games on Friday, 4 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. Now it'll be 4 on Saturday. 4 on Sunday, and 4 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. So that's exciting. You know, more teams competing, more people have stuff to play for at the end of the year. So that's always exciting.
Now, is the format, is there going to be like the top teams? Do they get a bye through the first round of that regional, Dave?
Yeah. So the top 2 teams in each region get a bye to nationals. That hasn't changed, just like that. But then it used to be that you would have when the first expansion, which was about, I guess, maybe not 8 years ago or so, was you would have the 9, 12, and 10 and 11 play on Friday, and then everyone else would come in. Now it's basically the 3rd seed, which would be the top seed at the regional, but I'm using like the regional ranking. The 3 through the 6 would get a bye. With the 7th seed in the region playing 14 and on through. So really, to be honest, it's now even more competitive at that kind of that mid-level, because before it was like just be 8. Like that was your goal, was if you be 8, you don't have to play Friday. Now, with it being up even higher, you know, you're like, wow, now it's even more competitive in those teams that are jockeying for position, when before they would have been like, well, if I'm the 6 or the 7, it doesn't really matter, because playing each other. 6 versus 7 used to be the game that was played. So whoop-de-doo. But now 6 gets Friday off, and 7's got to play, which, you know, is – and, you know, 3 games in 3 days is very difficult. So it's, you know, we're rewarding the regular season, but we're also rewarding more teams for their season, you know. And so that's our goal. We want to give teams as much opportunity to play for something as possible, earn their way on through the ice, you know, be on there. Some team gets super hot, some goalie goes out of his mind, they could be going to nationals.
Well, I tell you what, that's I might have to take a little road trip down to Columbus for that regional.
Well, I will be there, so you're more than welcome to come.
Hey, I just might take you up on that. My wife's got an aunt that lives about an hour away. We might have to make a weekend road trip of it.
Well, I
Um,
think it'll be a good tournament there. I think there's a
oh,
lot of a lot of really good teams from top to bottom that aren't going to be separated by too much. So I have a feeling you could see some upsets
oh,
at
that'll be
that
fun.
regional.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Dave, now I know I was talking to a couple coaches at the D1 level. I know that the final ranking for D1, they're going to be able to play some of these conference tournaments like the WAC tournament. I think the Great Lakes one. So that's going to make it a little more interesting for the D1 rankings coming out at the end of the year.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think more than any other division, I think M1 for whatever reason, and I couldn't, you start getting too deep into the math with me, my eyes start glazing over. But
Sure.
if you were to look at the way the rankings are, there's more movement in M1 once you get beyond like the first 5 or 6 seeds or
Hmm.
5 or 6 spots, which they move around, but it's like kind of like they're moving within them amongst themselves type
Hmm.
thing. You
Hmm.
start getting into like that 9, 10 on down. There's a lot of movement from week to week.
Yeah.
And part of it, I think, is just the number of teams. Having 69 teams means that everything's in more magnitude than, say, if you were to look at a team like a 90 some odd, almost 100, I think a little over 100 M3 teams, 180 M2 teams. There's just so much data that the movement isn't quite as much. But, that's that M1. I mean, you see teams jump 4 or 5 spots. And that's big, and I think being able to have the tournaments in there only makes it better. I think I love tournament play,
Oh
like, and
yeah.
I think I think I love when M2 brought in the idea that leagues, as long as they were of a certain size, and I mean there's guidelines to it, but that they could send their tournament champ as an auto bid to regionals.
Hmm.
I think it changed the whole dynamic, because suddenly you went from having 16 and then eventually to like 40 and then 48, but now you have like maybe 100 teams with a legitimate shot at making it to the regionals.
Yeah.
The same thing goes here with nationals. The more teams you can keep alive in M1 going for a spot longer, it only makes the hockey better.
Oh
It
heck
only,
yeah.
and that's what you want. You want teams to have something to play for the last couple of weeks of their year, and this is a great way to have that go. And I think with the distance that they have those between their tournament and the nationals is a good amount of time. It's not too
Mhm.
long. It's not too short
I
in
agree.
terms of prep.
I agree. We're joined by Dave Kurtz. He's the director of hockey operations for the ACHA as we get closer and closer to the national tournament coming up March 10th through the 20th down outside of St. Louis. It's always a great. It's great hockey, a lot of great competition, and now the way they've done it over the years with all the divisions in one locale, it just makes it that much more special. Dave, there's something I was looking at the website today, and I you know I saw a little bit a little tab that said, you hear about every once in a while of the guys that might make it to the minor leagues out of the ACHA, but I looked at the tab of the women's players and
Hmm.
how many of them are playing overseas professionally and maybe a few here locally in the states. And how cool is that they're able to take what they played here for 4 years and now they're going and prolonging their career and maybe making a little bit of money out of it, but still getting to play. And that's awesome to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that we were building the new site that I was really working on, and you can even see like we're actually in the middle, because we just did a big kind of dump of information into our side that we're trying to then get up onto the front side of even more. And this happens to be men's, because we finished the women's first, but
Hmm.
there's a lot more men to add to the list as well that is on that one. But yeah, I mean, I will say, when I first put together the women's one, yeah, there was like 20 maybe or something like that,
Hmm.
and it was the kind of the who's who of the ACHA women's side for a couple years. You recognize the names,
Uh-huh.
that they have. But yeah, but then when we went back to start doing updates for this year, because a lot of teams didn't play because of COVID last year, so we didn't have to do much in the update. There was all these new ones, and it's great. It's amazing that they're getting these chances to be able to play, and that there's opportunities across over the seas, and that they're getting recognized. And I think that That speaks well of the quality of talent that's being played.
Mhm.
It speaks well of that our coaches, I think, are becoming even more professional,
Yeah.
are even more recognized, even more internationally and nationally known as people. Like that, they're coming with that kind of hockey experience. That it's opening up the doors for players to get introductions. You know, a lot of times, and we know this, your next step after college, a lot of it can be as who you know.
Sure.
And if you have a coach who knows someone who's willing to say, who knows someone who's a coach somewhere and says, yeah, we'll give you a tryout. Well, you know, you might not get that,
Right.
you know, but across, you know, and things like that, especially if it's international. But it's great. We love it. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot more women as the M1 or excuse me the W1 teams begin to become even more competitive just in general. I mean, you know, I went out last year because I was working at the M2 and the W1 were like within an hour of each other in North Dakota.
Uh-huh.
So I got to go see for the first time ever a women's national tournament. And I mean, you know, there are a lot of really good players at that tournament. And that was a weaker tournament in terms of people because, again, it wasn't the best 8 in
Right.
the nation because there was teams that weren't playing.
Mhm.
But even then, there was talent all from top to bottom in that tournament that could definitely play at the next level, you know, and I think that's key and that's huge for us as an organization. And I only see it getting bigger because women's hockey is growing across the board.
Oh, 100%.
You know, there's more and more, so many more teams, which means more young women looking to play when they finish high school. You know, they want to play hockey in college, you know, and there's just there's so few NCAA programs that for lack of a better thing, the talent is overwhelming because there's so few spots to be able to get to the level. So you have women that probably could be playing at NCAA, playing at high level ACHA teams because there's only so many spots.
100% agree. 100% agree. Dave, I want to turn it a little bit here away from the ACHA talk. One of the themes that we've had tonight, and I also want to get your opinion on the football games this past weekend. It was such a great weekend, but we're doing something on our website, and an article I did called "What was your athlete when you were growing up that was larger than life?" When you started watching sports when you were a kid, who was that one or two athletes that who was just so larger than life that if you met them, you'd be speechless and wouldn't know what to say?
All right. Well, I'll give you two. I'll give you one because I'll give you one hockey related one.
Yep.
Because but I'll tell you from where I grew up in Baltimore County near Maryland, and so for me, my entire life was spent like with Cal Ripken. Like I was born 2 years before Cal Ripken started playing for the Orioles,
Mhm.
and so I grew up as an Oriole fan. My dad took me to games at Memorial Stadium and then eventually Cam Yards, and so I would watch him play, you know, every day. And of course, he did play every day, so it was easy to watch him.
Yeah.
But you know, that was always that person. Like it was like to see somebody there every day that was, you know, that represent you would see him, you know, even during the roughest years, like in '88 and stuff like that, he would be your representative at the All-Star game. So he would be proud just because it was the only guy. And when he would do stuff at the All-Star game, like when he won the home run derby or got MVP or whatever, like it was like you felt like he was representing all of your area because, you know, that was the guy. And so that was always my guy. Like I got to meet him once, like at an autograph signing, very nice guy and stuff like that. It was funny thing was that I would always, where he lived at, when I would be going to visit a family friend of ours, we would always drive by his house from where he lived, like in this massive like mansion that was like with a basketball court in there and everything like that. But it was kind of cool. It was almost like, hey, this guy lives near me. I mean, he was like a half an hour away, but in a mansion. But you know, but he's my next door neighbor.
Sure.
So for me, that was it. My hockey person it's funny when I started watching hockey, which there was no hockey really growing up where I lived at, like playing wise. And so when I started watching hockey, when my family finally got cable when I was in high school, I fell in love with watching Joe Sakic.
Okay.
And so, you know, this was right. He would have been this was right when the Nordiques would have been moving to Colorado. So
Oh,
a little
wow.
bit during the Nordique side. So I've always been an Avs fan since then. So I'm living life very high right now. Let me
Oh,
tell
I
you.
bet you are. That's awesome.
But like I loved how, because so many times I was watching guys that were huge and big and strong, McCarty's, Lindrosses, and all these kind of things, and then you have this guy who's a little smaller than everybody. He isn't as big as everyone. You think he would just get crushed out there, but he would just always find a way. He would avoid the hits, and his shot was so amazing. Like, again, it wasn't like this big slap shot that seemed to, like, everyone who fell in front of it was worried they were going to die. It was just, he was there, and he was a great leader, and he was respected by people. And so, like, I just thought that was the coolest guy ever, because it was someone that was, you wouldn't think looking in the early 90s NHL would be that be so good, and be able to survive in such a physical time in the league.
He was probably one of the few Colorado guys that Detroit Red Wing fans liked back then, because he was classy. I will say that.
He didn't hit guys from behind into the boards during the playoffs either. So that was always a good way. or come out and fight your goalies all the time. So yeah, but no,
Yeah.
I think that's something when I always found with him, and even players today, when the opposition of bitter rivalries respect that person, that says a lot, because guys come up with all sorts of reasons when you're playing your rival on why to push each other, to face wash each other, and all this kind of stuff. And when you don't see that happen to a player on the other team, there's something there. There's a respect that carries through the brotherhood of saying, look, that we may do that, but we're not going to do that to him.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Finally, before I let you go, what a great weekend of football. I know we talked briefly on it, texting back and forth. Your jubilation for Aaron Rodgers not making it to the next level. I'm right there with you, Dave. It couldn't be happier. I was shocked by the outcome, but the way he lost, it kind of made me feel better, because I think he kind of pooped the bed, if you will. But man, what a great weekend of games, eh?
I can't think of a better grouping of NFL games. Maybe any games like one and done. I guess maybe I could think of one or 2 years in the NCAA tournament when it was just upset galore. But that's different, because that's like you enjoy the upsets that happen because of the upsets. But it doesn't mean that the games necessarily were good. Mm-hmm. It just means that somebody lost that shouldn't have lost, type thing. But all those games, even the weakest game of the bunch, which in terms of offense would have been Green Bay and San Francisco, they still were coming down. And I mean, to be honest, I really thought that all 4 games were going to end up with a field goal winning them, which it almost did, But I tell you what, that ability of Patrick Mahomes. Now, granted, that there were. If they had not had 2 timeouts, that would have been a much different amount of 13 seconds, because they could, he basically threw 2 balls down the middle of the field, which is great. You got 2 timeouts. That's what you should do. But I read something where it was like Dak Prescott's run was 14 seconds, and Mahomes went from the 25 to wherever it was, ended up in 13. I mean, it was just amazing. But all those games were, and, I think, you see teams sometimes step up in the biggest moments and find a way to win. Like, if you gave me the stat line of Cincinnati, there's no way they should have won that game. Like, you tell me you're going to sack your quarterback 9 times and you win the game, I'm like, did the other team all get struck by lightning? But you think you'd be carried off on a stretcher, but they won. And look, I'm a Raven fan, so they're from the north, so I have to dislike them, but I have to give them respect that they're doing it. They're changing all the history that Cincinnati lives under, and I got to respect that. They're going out. I mean, when Burrows is getting rocked 9 times and he's still staying in the game, and out playing Tannehill, who seemed to want to give the ball to the Bengals all the time as it was. I think it's great. Someone put that, can we just cancel the rest of the turn and just put the Bills and the Chiefs into a 7-game series? I mean, it was great. It was amazing. All those points scored. I mean, it was amazing. And then the Rams game. I mean, you could almost, it almost feels like you were watching the Patriots against the Falcons, just rolling back in. But I'm really happy for Matthew Stafford that he had a chance to give his team a chance. And he did it. Now, let's say the guy misses the field goal. Okay. I still would say that about Stafford. All the years that he kept the stiff upper lip, never complained when he was in Detroit, never badmouthed the team when it was just like they couldn't seem to get anywhere. And he did. He went in and basically a lot of teams would have folded. You give up that many points. Yeah. You got Tom Brady on the other side. You thinking, man, this is just going to be another Brady, win coming out of nowhere, building on the legacy. But he got him in, and the guy kicked the field goal, and they won the game. And it should be a really good game. I think the Rams are going to handle the 49ers as long as they pretty well, as long as they don't turn the ball over. Right. They can't. They're certainly probably not going to get a blocked field goal and a blocked punt like they did against the 49ers. And to be honest, as much as I think Cincinnati's had a good ride, I think Mahomes is going to go back for the third year in a row. I think the Chiefs are there. That was, like they're going to smell it getting back. They're playing at home, dodging the bullet of really probably the second best AFC team of having to play them in the second round. I think they're going to take care. Instead, doesn't lessen what Cincinnati did, but I still think they're So I think it's going to be the Mahomes against the Rams, and that should be a really good Super Bowl.
I agree.
So
I'm right there with you, Dave. That's where I'm leaning towards as well. Hey, I appreciate you coming on, Dave. You got me fired up for the national tournament. And, first of all, we got the regionals coming up in February. I'm going to really seriously think about coming down and checking that out. Should be some great hockey. I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be in touch with you. Dave, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys, and just encourage. We'll keep you updated on stuff. But
all right,
hopefully, we'll catch up between the regionals and the nationals, and we can get everyone excited about that. All right, Lou. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Dave Kurtz with us, the director of hockey operations for the ACHA. It's getting down to crunch time. We talk on our broadcasts on the Aquinas Network. This is sprint time. The first semester is the marathon. Now it's the sprint, and you got teams jockeying for position, as Dave mentioned, for the seedings. D1, it's the top 20. They've got, conference automatic qualifiers, as does women's D1. And then D2, they're going to take the top 8. And you've got, D3, they're going to take the top 16. But with such a big men's Division 2, the regionals make sense, and it's a great explanation by Dave on that. Those are going to be the weekend of 28th of February, I believe, and then right after that, it's go time for the nationals. So, hey, it's going to be fun. We're going to keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the world of ACHA. We've got a couple of coaches lined up for next week on the program to talk more and see how their progress is going as the road to St. Louis is getting into full steam. Thanks to Dave Kurtz. We've got Boz Echevarri coming up in about 6 minutes. He's our West Coast guy, our San Francisco 49er guy. And I know he's going to be pretty fired up to talk about that as the 49ers defied all the odds and beat the Golden Boy at Lambeau again in the playoffs. Can't say that I'm disappointed. Did I say that? I did say that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have Boz on and a whole lot more. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on Zingo TV, channel 761, and our 12-ounce sports platform and networks.
12-ounce Sports has a new home for betting. BetUS.com is the official place to place your bets and support 12-ounce Sports. All you have to do is go to BetUS.com and type in the promo code 120ZE and you'll instantly get a deposit bonus. This is America's favorite sports book. And remember, always gamble responsibly.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network, 12OunceSportsRadio.com, our Twitter feed, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitch, and, of course, Zingo TV, Channel 761. Thanks to Dave Kurtz, the Director of Hockey Operations for the ACHA, stopping on by and getting us up to date on how the Nationals are coming about and getting everybody ready, kind of getting everybody in the mood for ACHA hockey even more. The D2 regionals are coming up the last weekend of February, as I mentioned, the 24th through the 27th. And so we'll keep an eye on that. But we've got a lot more great ACHA hockey coming up before that, as we've got about 6 weeks to go before nationals start. God, it's coming already. Hard to believe, 6-7 weeks. Like I said, well, you got about 45 to 50 days left before the start of nationals. They're going to be here before you know it. And thanks to Dave for stopping on by. We're talking to Bob Every in the first hour of our show, and let him get back to watch that Michigan State-Illinois game. It was once an 18-point lead for Illinois, and they held off Michigan State 56 to 55. Wow, what a finish there. So Michigan State falls by 1 to Illinois. Illinois goes to 14-5 now in the conference, and Michigan State falls, or overall 7-2 in the conference. They are now a half a game ahead of Michigan State, tied in the loss column, both with 2 losses in conference. So still to come, Boz Echevarri going to join us here shortly. We're going to talk some NFL football with him as well. How could you not talk about this weekend's games? As Dave mentioned, if not one of the best weekends of sports that we've seen in quite a while, definitely one of the best weekends of playoff football in NFL history, as, all 4 games coming down to the wire, 1 in overtime, 3 road teams winning, Cincinnati, San Francisco, and the Rams all winning on last-second field goals. Absolutely stunning. And what a great weekend of football. And we'll talk to him, too, about the Hall of Fame vote. Again, I personally am not disappointed in the vote. I know Boz is probably going to have his feelings on that. I know he's a big Barry Bonds fan. When you mess with the integrity of the game, maybe I'm just too old school and I need to get off my lawn or whatever, but, you're messing with the rules. And my question is, if he didn't have those, if it wasn't induced, would he have gotten all those records? I don't think he'd be the home run king. That's just me, but there you go. Hey, a reminder that one of our sponsors here is BetUS.com, and to get to them, the easiest way to do it, go to 12OunceSportsRadio.com/BetUS. It'll take you right to the website. And you can look at the matchups for this weekend, basketball, football, hockey, whatever your flavor is for sports. And, make sure you check that out. Let's go back to our guest line on the Captain Lou Extravaganza guest line, and let's bring in one happy individual out west, out by the Golden Gate. That being Boz Echevarri, our San Francisco insider. Boz, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. How are you? Always a blast being back on. But how are you, Lou?
I'm fantastic, man. So tell me, what were your thoughts? First of all, you guys are down 10-3, and you stopped them. Did you honestly think you were going to – I mean, I don't know if you really thought you were going to get that block punt, but what a range of emotions you must have been going through. All of a sudden, you're tied up.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because going through the season, it was the Achilles heel of this team has been the special teams. It hasn't been good. It reared its head up in the wild card game against Dallas. But the one thing I looked at when I was looking at the special teams ranking, I saw the Niners down at 25, but lo and behold, down at 32 were the Green Bay Packers. So I was feeling pretty good about special teams because we had a better special teams than the one that we were playing. So I mean, and that's football, right? I mean, that's why special teams, they can make or break your season. In this case, it kind of it broke Green Bay's season. And we all remember what happened in 2010 or 2009 with the Chargers.
Yep.
Best offense, best defense, worst special teams, and they missed the playoffs.
Yeah. No, and it's funny, Boz, is I looked at that game and I looked beforehand and I knew it was going to be cold, but I didn't know it was going to be that windy. And, because you always hear the talking heads and the bettors, and they say snow games, they call them snover for a reason. Always go for the over. So I'm thinking, if there's any way San Francisco is going to beat Green Bay, I honestly thought it might be on a last-second field goal by Robbie Gould, where it would be 31-28, not 13-10. So I give credit to your defense. Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, this defense, it really has the feelings that it's starting to peak, which is exactly what you want. You want to be peaking this time of the year, going into the January games, and the Niners timed it really perfectly. I mean, starting off 3-5, all the injuries, now everyone coming back, getting healthy, and really feeling the identity. And really, this kind of has the let's go get one for Jimmy feel for it, because we all, it's well documented what's been going on with the Niners and the quarterback situation. But that also goes back to how much the locker room really rallies around Jimmy and how much they really love the guy, to really kind of put the season together. Let's keep playing. And then the fact that Jimmy's like smiling in the huddle while, like, the picture of him smiling, it's like, I don't ever want to compare the Joe Montana story, seeing John Candy in the end zone, but it just seeing Jimmy kind of smile and hey guys, like, let's relax. We're playing a kids game. Let's go have some fun. And then, him growing up in Chicago and the the F the Packers comment with Robbie Gould.
Yeah, that was amazing.
After the game. Yeah.
But he took the high road. He's taken the high road all year. They bring Trey Lance in. You hear the buzz. You hear the talk. It's like, have you ever seen a team that, you hear the talk, it's game to game. You play one bad game, you're out. And he didn't bitch and moan to the media. If he was mad, he kept it in-house or he kept it in his own house. Classy. I gained so much respect for Jimmy G. I rooted for him obviously against Dallas and against Green Bay, but I'm rooting for his story, and I really like how it's turning out so far for him.
Yeah, and I think what's even like along with that as well is Kyle Shanahan just being, look, Jimmy's our guy. I know we drafted Trey, but the fact that he told Jimmy what was up before he even made the move, or when the move was made, and then even going through the season, 3-5. Everyone around here was, 3-5, get Trey in.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of questioned that myself, but to Kyle's credit, he's just been, no, Jimmy's our guy, and we're going to ride with him. And kind of wild because the last two seasons he's been playing the Niners have been in the NFC Championship game. So I mean, the guy knows there's leadership qualities and all the analytics that point don't have Jimmy as your quarterback. There's intangibles that you really have to look at.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's like a defining factor of I should go sign this guy, but I mean the proof is kind of on the field right now with what Jimmy means to his teammates.
Wow, and if nothing else, it's going to raise his trade stock value as well. And I don't. If you look ahead to next year, and I know you and I will talk about this, I'm sure, in the off season, but boy, it's going to create a little bit of a headache to try to figure out, are they really going to get rid of him? Even if, let's say that he brings you guys back to the Super Bowl,
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question because, Steve Young's always talked about this where, he had all the MVPs, he had all the passing titles, he had, all pro teams, but it wasn't until he actually won a Super Bowl when everyone in like the San Francisco market was like, "Oh yeah, you're one of us. Like, we're all happy together because you got us a Super Bowl." It'll for sure create a different storyline. But that's, I mean, in a way, that's kind of the way that Joe and Steve built it, where you got to win the Super Bowl or we like you. You're a nice guy. You can stay, but you just can't stay for a while.
One of the things that kind of scared me towards the end of that game Saturday night, seeing Deebo Samuel kind of limp off the sidelines. Have you heard anything on him? Is he doing all right?
Deebo's good to go. It's interesting with Deebo because the guy's a workhorse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he takes a beating, and the guy really is a Swiss Army knife. And anyone that has a Swiss Army knife, like those take a beating as well.
Yes.
So yeah, Deebo's good to go. He took a couple shots, and he's playing them cold. It makes it harder. It makes it a lot harder to play in inclement weather when the temperature's below freezing.
Well,
so
yeah,
he's good to go, and Trent Williams good to go.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you about that. That's good. For your sake, I'm glad to hear that. Now it brings up the obvious next question. You look at you guys. They kept saying, well, Green Bay's due to beat San Francisco in the playoffs. 3 or 4 in a row. Now you've got the Herculean task of going down to SoFi. 6 in a row, you've beaten them. And, now it's is it going to be lucky number 7? Let me ask you this. Are you going down, and I know you want to win, don't get me wrong, but are you going down there with a house money mentality?
So this is the argument I've kind of had all week with myself. The Niners beating the Cowboys, they beaten the Packers.
Yeah.
Those rivalries are well documented. Those are, some were all Madden games.
Yep.
Niners Rams, another summer all Madden game, just because like a lot of people forget the Rams, they were originally in LA, and that was a huge rivalry anytime it goes down there. And it's interesting because Ryan Jones and I, we talked about it on the Saloon, but we're just like, it's weird with these rivalry games in the NFL now because they almost take a college kind of script to it where there's just so much unpredictability that you just have to take the game at face value with whatever happened outside of the game or in previous games just kind of goes out the window. But I think there is a little bit of a mental edge of ownage that the Niners just right now have over LA. And I think that might linger in with just this LA group.
Boy, it's going to be a fun game to watch Saturday night or Sunday night. Man, oh man. You've got two different contrast of styles right now anyways. I know you've got Deebo, but you look on paper, the weapons that LA has, but I think they haven't played a defense like San Francisco's, and I think that's your equalizer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the front set, the seven of the Niners. It's been well documented how good they are, how physical they are, and it really just they bully other teams, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because you look at that week 18 matchup. Um, McVay was just kind of doing it. I mean, I don't want to say the game didn't really matter to the Rams, but it kind of did because they were before the end result of the Cardinals Seahawks game. They had to play for the division,
Yeah.
and they had a chance of eliminating their rival. So there's still a lot riding on that game. And I mean, the same thing happened. Jumped out to an early lead, and then allowed the Niners to come back and really just. I mean, they got punched in the face,
Yeah.
and it was a pretty big punch. And yeah, that's one of those things. And I think right now I was looking. Vivid Seats has it projected 60-40 of Niner fans being down
Wow.
in SoFi.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think the projection towards Friday should be around 70-30 for Niner fans.
Are you going to be one of those 70?
I'm not. Unfortunately, I already made a trip down to the Rose Bowl. I don't know if I could do 2 LA trips in 1 week. So
That's
I
right.
apologize for not taking care of Ohio State for you, but
Hey, that's all
yeah.
right. We already took care of them once. That's good enough for me. It got Michigan into the playoff. You know, to me, I kind of was it's funny that game against Georgia. It almost felt like we were playing on house money. You know, I know it was nice to get there. Now next year or whenever we get back, then you got to finish the deal. But you know, what did you think of them other games this past weekend? How that Kansas City Buffalo game? Wow, and then Cincinnati coming through. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, my question was, where's the defense? Like,
I don't
where was
know.
the defense in the last 2 minutes? Like, it felt like a Big 12 game. There's no defense. And then, I mean, look, you probably talked about it as well, but the NFL overtime thing, they got to do something about this.
I agree. I haven't really talked about it, but you brought it up. I'm glad you did. I think they should give each team one possession no matter what in overtime.
Yeah, I know a lot of people want to see the college overtime in the NFL. The NFL will never do that just because, they want to be different and they want to be the leaders of everything. This is me. I'm like, hey, just throw another 15 on the clock, and whoever's winning at the end of the 15, there's your winner. You know, because you're guaranteeing both teams to have the ball.
I can go along with that. But my question to you is, going back to that Kansas City Buffalo game, why did they not chuck the ends? Why did Buffalo not, hit, Kelsey at the line of scrimmage or Tyreek Hill? I mean, I understand you want to play a little bit of a Wayne Fonts prevent, but good God, man. It's the same thing in some of these other games. The Rams game, I mean, against Tampa Bay. Hit the end at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Alter their pattern. I don't get that. Why do teams all of a sudden forget to do stuff like that?
It's interesting because you feel like during the week that in the defensive meeting rooms, there's always the one player on the team where you're going to say, this guy cannot beat us.
Yeah.
I mean, for me last week, it was Davante Adams. Like, anyone else but Davante Adams could beat us. Like, and the same thing with the Chiefs. You can't have Kelsey. You can't have Kelsey beat you. Like, you got to know where he's at all times. Just because, as speedy as Hill is, Kelsey's the guy that the tight end position is such a key position in the red zone because that's always going to be the quarterback's first look. But even in the open field where you have Kelsey who could run away from some defenders, you got to know where he is at all times because he's an easy target for any quarterback, much less someone of the talent level of Patrick Mahomes.
Great point. Great point. And I don't know. Maybe it's just the heat of the moment. I don't know. So who do you got in that other game, Cincinnati and in Kansas City?
So I'm a little nostalgic right now.
Sure.
Madden was my guy. I got to meet him a couple times. Refereeing some football games out in California.
Yeah.
His grandson plays at one of the high schools, so he always showed up, and he always gave us some jokes as referees, but he was a good dude. And still the most watched football game ever was Bengals Niners, and that was Madden and Summerall's first
Yeah.
first Super Bowl together. So I kind of think it'd be cool to have a Niners Bengals Super Bowl. You get John Madden's last broadcast partner and Al Michaels calling that game. I think it'd be like a perfect kind of salute to Madden. The last I mean, he wasn't here for the whole football season, but
Right.
kind of just a nod to John.
Well, I know there's a lot of people out there that like to see the trilogy. Super Bowl, another. Niners, Bengals 3. There's a good chance that I wouldn't put it past either team to win. I just don't know if the Bengals got enough to beat Kansas City. I don't know. I mean, like you just said, we just talked about, the defense, they went to sleep. Now, I know they were gassed. Both teams were gassed. And that's a tribute to the offenses on both sides, too, Buffalo and
Yep.
Kansas City.
Yeah, I think the Bengals defense can they got a stout defense. I mean, they're there in
Yeah.
the playoffs for a reason. But unless Joe Burrow can figure out a way to throw a football from his back, I don't know how Cincinnati's going to put the points up.
I don't either.
So-
I don't either. Well, before I let you go, Boz, I know I'm going to hit a nerve, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. I know you're disappointed in what happened tonight. I love you to death, and I just don't know if those guys deserve to be in. I know they're going to get in because I know the current committee or the whatever they call it is going to get them in. But I don't know. It's tough being a Barry Bonds fan tonight, and I know you're probably disappointed.
I mean, can I say that I kind of expected this because I really did?
Oh, I
Yeah.
no doubt. You're a realist.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, Jeff Passan wrote a pretty good article, making his point of
Yeah.
sticking Barry in there, and he's right. I mean, you have Bud Selig who's in there. You have like the third, fourth, and fifth best players who were in the steroid era. They're in the Hall of Fame, but I mean, just to and even David Ortiz, now he's in the Mitchell report.
Yeah, right.
He never tested positive for PEDs, same as Barry, but Ortiz was in. The only thing I could say is that media liked Ortiz a lot better than they did, Clemens or Barry or A-Rod, and you know what? That's just the way it is. I'm a little bitter, but I'm not going to say like it's tough. You have the guy. Just looking at we could go through all the numbers.
I mean,
Barry
know.
Bonds.
You're right. And it's funny as you bring up a good point. It's the baseball writers that do this, and I had my first guest tonight is a guy that lives a little ways from me. He's an older gentleman. He's in his 60s, and he is just you could tell in his voice he is pissed that those guys didn't get in, and it kind of surprised me because I figured he's old school. He did. He was of the mindset that they cheated and this and that, but he's with you. This Baseball Writers Association vote is so flawed. Boz, they got guys in there that are grandfathered in that haven't been to a game in over a decade. It's like the Heisman vote. It is so flawed, and I'm with you. But the one thing that stuck out it was when I saw the vote live today on MLB. One of their criteria was integrity, and I just and you and I can argue about this until 10 days to Tuesday, but if they knew they were doing it, and eventually they're going to get caught, why did they do it? Because both him and Clemens were both surefire Hall of Famers, even without doing that.
Even without it, yeah.
And I just don't understand. I know it's ego, and they wanted to play longer, but I don't know, man. It's such great arguments both ways, and I feel you. But you're passionate.
They're doing it for people like us, Lou. They want us to keep the discussion going. So baseball's still in the limelight. That's what's the old saying? what is it?
Any any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, any publicity is good publicity. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what baseball's going for right now.
They need it though, man. With the talks, I don't know. I think they're going to get it done. They may miss a little bit of spring training, but I'm glad they're meeting at least both sides, eh?
Just start.
Yeah.
You gotta start with meeting with each other. It's hard. It's hard to get negotiations done when you're not talking to each other.
And it's funny. I was talking last week with a guy I had on my show. I've been through 3 negotiations with my job. I'm on our bargaining committee. I'm our union steward, and we wouldn't lock ourselves, but we would set aside 8 days to get it done. 8 straight days. And we'd get something hammered out, at least a TA, a tentative agreement.
Yeah.
And these guys, I just don't get it. And I understand there's no sense of urgency right now, but you would think that these guys would get in a room for a weekend or whatever and say, let's just get this done. Baseball can't afford any more negative vibes. And, I just, they're teetering on it, and I'm worried.
Yeah. I mean, really right now, the way that this is going is kind of making it. It's really just with everything that's going on. This is kind of make or break it for baseball. So
Yeah.
they got to have a season. I mean, with popularity of MLS right now, soccer. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to be taken over by or be passed by soccer, and that means you have to have a season.
I agree. Boz, this has been great. Hey, you mentioned Ryan Jones. Tell old Jonesy Captain Lou said hi, man. I haven't talked to him in quite a while. So tell us a little bit about what you guys do, your podcast.
Yeah, the Sports Saloon. Just a bunch of guys in the Rocky Mountains and the West Coast. I mean, a lot of it is we're taking shots at each other's teams. But we just kind of talk about like what the week in sports from our vantage point. And the other thing too is we just like we like catching up with each other just because we don't see each other every day. So it's just a fun podcast. You kind of get our perspective. A lot of stuff that's going down on the West Coast. So we'll talk a little about the Rams, the Seahawks, the AFC West, NFC West, and then the good old Western Conference. The lesser known conference in the NHL.
Well, Boz, I'm up against it. I got to let you go. This has been fun as always. Hey, good luck Sunday. I'll be thinking about you, and hopefully your team can get that next trip to the Super Bowl. Thanks for taking time out tonight, man. Be safe, all right?
Hey, you as well. Always appreciate it. And, just like the rest of the playoffs, I'm just going to enjoy the journey. That's all you can do.
Right on. Thanks, Boz. Good luck.
Hey, thanks, man. Take care.
You bet. You too. Boz Echevarri joining us here on the show, talking a little San Francisco football, NFL, and, of course, the MLB Hall of Fame vote. It's getting back to that as we wrap up the show here tonight. I love listening to other opinions. And, Bob Every's really surprised me. I didn't really, I thought he would kind of be on my side on this. And he brought up some great points. And it harkens to the committee and who votes. And, what the other thing that bothers me about the Hall of Fame vote is, say, and I'm going to use David Ortiz, for example, or even somebody else like Derek Jeter. People will not vote him in because they figure he's going to get in anyways, and they want to give somebody else their vote to maybe be able to stick around in the Hall of Fame voting. That, to me, is so hypocritical. But you got agendas. And it always reminds me of back 30-some years ago when I was working up in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. We used to have what was called the UPSSA, UP Sports Writers and Sportscasters Association. And we'd have our all-UP vote of the players, men or boys and girls in high school, football and basketball. Nobody on the west side of the Upper Peninsula voted for anybody on the east side. Nobody on the east side voted for anybody on the west. And in the central, half the time they wouldn't vote for each other. And it was so biased. And so it was comical. and there was so many arguments. And that's kind of what this is. You know, like Bob and I were talking. Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell were a double play combination for Detroit for 20 years, 19, 20 years. Longest ever. If they were a Yankee or a Red Sox, they'd have been voted first ballot without a doubt. And Lou Whitaker not being in the Hall of Fame, like Bob said, is an absolute travesty. Well, hey, that's going to about do it here tonight. What a great show. Great guests. Awesome conversation, as always. Want to thank Bob Every for coming on. He is the president of the Lansing Sports Hall of Fame in Lansing, Michigan. Big boxing historian. You heard him talk. He Golden Gloves champ in the state of Michigan from 66 to 68. He watched, Muhammad Ali when he was in the Olympics, and then throughout his career, gotten to know him quite well. He first met him in 1970. Kind of our theme of that athlete that was larger than life, or that is to you, or was in your youth, or even maybe right now for those of us that aren't in our youth anymore. But great conversation with Bob about the boxing world back in the 70s. And it was an event. You could watch it on ABC, Wide World of Sports. I can always remember that. That's where I watched Ali and Frazier, on Wide World of Sports on a Saturday afternoon. And like I mentioned him, watching Ken Norton and Muhammad Ali on a Friday night in like 1974. You don't see that unless you want to pay $70 to watch it on pay-per-view. And this cowboy's not doing that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. But thanks to Bob for joining us. Great conversation. Dave Kurtz from the ACHA, Director of Hockey Operations. Their national championships are coming up here from March 10th to the 20th. Looking forward to that. Regionals for their D2 are coming up at the end of February. And, of course, Boz Echevarri, our West Coast insider. And, talking San Francisco and everything else going on in the world of the NFL playoffs. And, as always, want to thank you, the viewer, for taking time out tonight to be with us, even if it's for a couple of moments, to watch us here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on 12 Ounce Sports. Well, that's going to do it tonight. Again, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week. This reminder, keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Until next week, we'll see you on the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on 12